always thought sisterhood meant unconditional love, but mine came with fine print, her rules, her needs, her voice always louder than mine. For years, I stayed quiet while she painted me as the villain in her one-woman show. Until one day, she crossed a line that even I couldn't forgive, and that's when I decided, if she thought I was selfish, I'd finally show her what selfish really looked like. My name is Marissa. Growing up with Lauren as my sister felt like living in someone else's shadow, but not just any shadow. It was like trying to bloom under a spotlight that never pointed your way. She was the kind of girl who seemed like she belonged in a teen drama: flawless skin, long honey blonde hair that curled effortlessly without a single product, and this effortless laugh that made people lean in closer, as if she were some kind of magnetic force. Teachers adored her. Neighbors adored her. Even the checkout lady at the grocery store would light up when Lauren smiled. And God, did she know it. By the time I was old enough to start noticing the world around me, I already knew where I ranked. Lauren was the golden girl, the chosen one. The one who got straight A's and piano solos at recitals and compliments from strangers about how gracious and well-spoken she was. Meanwhile, I was the kid with scuffed shoes, paint on her fingers, and too many thoughts I never spoke aloud. At school, teachers would pull me aside and ask, "Are you sure you're Lauren's sister?" Not cruelly, but curiously. Like they couldn't reconcile our differences. I was quiet. Not shy, just observant. While Lauren sparkled, I blended in. She moved through the world like it was hers to charm. I tiptoed, feeling like a guest in every room I entered. At home, it wasn't much different. Our parents weren't mean, not intentionally. But there's a special kind of invisibility that comes when someone else in the family shines too brightly. Lauren's trophies lined the hallway wall. Her dance photos filled the frames in the living room. When she got accepted into the National Honor Society, there was a dinner. When I had my first art piece displayed at the community gallery. A half-hearted, "That's nice, honey," while Dad scrolled through emails. I didn't even expect applause anymore. Still, I clung to the things that were mine: my sketchbook, my old flannel hoodie, my headphones that kept the world at a comfortable distance. They weren't much, but they were sacred. Personal. Safe. And yet Lauren, she treated boundaries like suggestions. She'd waltz into my room without knocking, pick up my drawings, and flip through them with a practiced disinterest. "This one's cute," she'd say, usually pointing at something I'd poured hours into. Then she'd toss the pages down like they were homework flyers and move on. There was one time, I must have been around 14, when I had sketched this piece I was really proud of. A girl with storm clouds in her eyes, raindrops as earrings, and lightning bolts dancing in her hair. I remember hiding it under my pillow because I didn't want her to touch it. But one afternoon, I came home to find Lauren showing it off to her friend Melanie like she had drawn it. "Oh my God, that's so dope," Melanie had said, turning it sideways to look at it from a different angle. "Did you really draw that?" Lauren just smiled, that infuriating smile, and said, "Kinda. Kinda." I stood frozen in the doorway, the words caught in my throat like splinters. I wanted to scream. I wanted to snatch it out of their hands and yell, "That's mine." But instead, I just turned around and walked away. It wasn't just the drawing. It was the way she always took the best parts of me and wore them like accessories, without credit, without care. Like I was just a closet she could rummage through when her own sparkle dulled. And every time I tried to push back, I was branded. "God, why are you so moody all the time?" she'd snap when I said something back. Or worse, "You're being difficult again." Difficult. That word echoed in my head like a verdict. Not misunderstood. Not quiet. Difficult. As if my discomfort with being erased was the real crime. There was one Thanksgiving, I think I was 15, when Lauren came downstairs in my favorite cardigan. It was this oversized rust-colored thing I'd saved up for all summer working at the library. She hadn't even asked. She never did. I remember pulling her aside and whispering, "That's mine." She rolled her eyes like I was ridiculous. "You're so selfish. It's just a sweater. Relax." I could feel my hands trembling. Not from rage would have felt cleaner. It was from the ache of being gaslit into silence again. From the shame of wanting something for myself and being told it was wrong. And no one, stood up for me. Mom glanced up from the mashed potatoes and said, "Can't you just let it go, Marissa? She's your sister." That line. "She's your sister." Like that explained everything. Like that was supposed to excuse every time she stepped on me to reach higher ground. So I stopped trying to explain. I stopped asking for things to be returned, stopped correcting her in front of her friends, stopped trying to tell our parents when something wasn't fair. I bit my tongue until I couldn't taste the words anymore. Because when the world keeps telling you that you're the one with the problem, you eventually start to believe it. That maybe, just maybe, I really was the selfish one. But what they called difficult was just me biting my tongue every time she took something that was mine. It started small, so small, in fact, that I almost convinced myself it didn't matter. A missing top here, a borrowed scarf there. At first, it was just Lauren doing what Lauren always did, taking things that didn't belong to her and acting like they were hers by default. I'd open my closet in the morning to find my favorite denim jacket gone, only to spot it later in her Instagram post, styled to perfection under the golden hour light, tagged with hashtags like #myvibe and #sistersteals. I didn't even comment. I just scrolled past it like it didn't bother me. But it did. Because every time she wore something of mine, she returned it stained, wrinkled, or stretched out, like the physical damage mirrored the disregard she felt for anything that was mine. My soft blue sweater that used to hang snug on my shoulders came back with soy sauce dribbled down the sleeve and a cigarette burn on the hem. She shrugged and said, "It was just a dumb party," like that somehow erased the fact that she never asked and never apologized. But the clothes weren't the worst of it. My sketchbooks, those were sacred. My sketches weren't just doodles. They were pieces of me, raw and unfiltered, scrawled during 2 a.m. anxiety spirals or lazy Sunday mornings when the world finally felt quiet enough to breathe. Drawing was how I made sense of my thoughts, my sadness, my hope. Lauren treated them like coloring books. She'd pick one up off my desk while scrolling through her phone, flipping pages with greasy fingertips, barely glancing at the drawings. "This is cute, I guess," she'd mutter as if my hours of detail were something a toddler scrawled in crayon. One day, she handed one back and laughed, "You still draw girls with wings. Aren't you too old for that fantasy stuff?" I said nothing. Just watched her walk away as if she hadn't just sliced through something precious with a careless smirk. My fists clenched under the table. I told myself it didn't matter. That she didn't mean it. That I was being sensitive again. But the truth was, it did matter. It mattered more than I could admit out loud. The final straw, or so I thought, at the time, was when I got accepted into an art program I'd worked years for. Years. I'd built a portfolio with trembling hands and late-night sobs, critiqued every angle of my work until my eyes blurred. I'd skipped parties, babysat every weekend, and worked at the local bookstore just to afford supplies. When the acceptance letter arrived, I cried. Real, shaking, cathartic tears. It felt like the universe had finally noticed me. Like maybe, just maybe, I wasn't invisible. I showed the letter to my parents first. Dad smiled distractedly and said, "That's great, honey." Mom hugged me and asked how much it would cost. But Lauren. She rolled her eyes and scoffed, "Well, it's not real college, but whatever makes her happy." That line still echoes in my head like a slap. She said it in front of our cousins at a barbecue. Loud enough that people heard. Loud enough that my triumph deflated like a balloon left in the sun. And just like that, I was back to being the moody little sister with the silly hobby and the fake degree. I told myself to let it go. That it wasn't worth the fight. That she was just being her. Because that's what Mom always told me when Lauren crossed a line. She's your sister. Be the bigger person. God, I hated that phrase. As if being older gave her permission to be cruel. As if swallowing your pride was some kind of moral achievement. But being the bigger person got heavy. So heavy. It meant I was constantly shrinking myself, dimming my light so she wouldn't feel threatened. It meant biting back the truth until it rotted in my chest. She twisted everything I did into something small. Something shameful. If I cleaned the kitchen. She told everyone I did it because I had nothing better to do. If I said no to a favor. Marissa never helps around the house, she'd announce in that fake sweet tone, like she was sharing a secret meant to sound funny. At family dinners, she turned me into a punchline. Well, Marissa wouldn't know, she never thinks about anyone but herself. Laughter would follow. Easy, careless laughter. Our uncle would chuckle, Mom would smile awkwardly, and Dad would keep chewing. And I'd sit there, blinking back tears, wondering if anyone saw me drowning. It wasn't just that she mocked me. It was how effortlessly she did it. Like she'd rehearsed her lines and knew exactly how to say them in front of an audience that would never question her. But the real breaking point came the night before Mom's surgery. Mom had been diagnosed with something scary but treatable. We were told it would be a straightforward operation, but that didn't ease the knot in my stomach. I took 3 days off work. I stocked the fridge, wrote out a medication schedule, even made her favorite soup in bulk and froze it in labeled containers. I cleaned the bathrooms. Folded laundry. Set up extra pillows on her bed. Lauren. She showed up late. Waltzed in 2 hours after she said she would, carrying a bag of takeout, only for herself. Thai food. The scent of basil and fish sauce filled the air as she plopped down on the couch, kicked off her boots, and started scrolling through her phone. Did you bring anything for Mom? I asked. She looked up, wide-eyed, like the thought had never occurred to her. Oh. No. I figured you already had it covered. No apology. No remorse. Just that nonchalant shrug she'd mastered since we were kids. Later that night, she posted a photo of her meal with the caption, "Doing the most for family. We always step up when it counts." I stared at the screen for a long time. I didn't even feel angry right away. I felt numb. Like I was watching a stranger pretend to care while the real version sat on the couch letting the world believe her lie. I confronted her. Quietly. Away from Mom's room. Why would you post that? I asked. She didn't even look up from her phone. Because I am holding things together, she said with a dramatic sigh. It's not like anyone else is. My jaw clenched. You didn't even bring her food. Lauren finally looked at me. Her eyes were glazed, bored. You're always so dramatic. It's not always about you, Marissa. Try thinking about someone else for once. That sentence. That one sentence. I can't explain the way it shattered me. It was like every time I'd ever held my tongue came crashing back at once, every insult, every stolen moment, every dismissal, every sacrifice. And she stood there, spitting the same script, expecting me to just nod and take it. But I couldn't breathe. I couldn't breathe. Her words cut so deep they didn't bleed, they bruised. I went to the bathroom and stared at myself in the mirror. My eyes were red. My hands were shaking. I pressed my palms to the cold porcelain sink and just stood there. And that's when it hit me. Maybe she was right. Maybe I had been thinking about everyone else for too long. So I stopped. Not in some loud, dramatic, middle-of-the-night declaration. Not with a slammed door or a shouted, "I'm done." That's not how people like me give up. We just start withdrawing, quietly, deliberately, piece by piece. First, I stopped cleaning up her messes. No more last-minute favors. No more covering for her when she forgot family birthdays. No more ghostwriting thank you notes she was too self-involved to write. I deleted the reminders I used to set on my phone, to text her about mom's checkups, to bring her portfolio to events she flaked on, to remind her to follow up on the internship she never appreciated. I didn't tell her. I just let the silence speak. Let her face the consequences without a buffer. Next, I stopped correcting the lies she told about me. You'd be amazed how easy it is to let someone expose themselves when you step out of the way. I stopped defending myself when she joked at my expense in front of others. I stopped countering her passive-aggressive stories at family dinners. I let her call me selfish, cold, ungrateful. I let the words hang in the air like smog, and I said nothing. And oddly, that hurt her more than any argument I'd ever tried to win. Then, I stopped trying to explain myself to our parents. I used to go out of my way to make sure they knew my side. I'd try to prove that I was helping, that I wasn't bitter, that I loved them even if I wasn't loud about it. But all it did was make me feel like a child begging to be seen. So I let that go too. Let them believe what they wanted. And for the first time in my life, I stopped performing. Stopped trying to be the bigger person. I decided to give Lauren exactly what she always accused me of being, selfish. At first, it felt unnatural. Like putting on a jacket that didn't quite fit. Guilt would creep in late at night like an old friend, whispering, "You're becoming her." But then I'd remember the ache in my chest from years of being trampled on. The feeling of rage curling up inside me like a secret I had no right to carry. And slowly, guilt was replaced by peace. Not the kind that comes with validation, but the kind that comes with letting go of a toxic contract you never signed but were expected to honor. It didn't take long for things to unravel. The first crack came when she applied for a job at a well-known design firm, ironically, the same one I'd interned with during my last semester in the art program she mocked. She texted me one afternoon, out of the blue. "Hey, I just listed you as a reference. Hope that's cool." I stared at the message, my thumb hovering over the screen. In the past, I would have scrambled to say something nice about her to help her get the role. I would have written a glowing recommendation, lied if I had to, just to keep the peace. Not this time. Instead, I called my old mentor at the firm. I didn't say much. I didn't trash her. I simply told the truth. "I know she applied," I said, calm but firm. "But you should know, she once submitted my artwork as her own. Back in high school. She never apologized. I don't want that kind of dishonesty tied to my name." There was a long pause on the other end. "Thank you for letting us know," he said. "That matters." The next time I saw Lauren, she was fuming. She threw her phone onto the couch and glared at me like I'd stolen her dream. "They said they're going in a different direction," she snapped. "I wonder why." I didn't flinch. I just looked at her, cool and unbothered. "Maybe they wanted someone honest," I said. She blinked. She wasn't used to me pushing back. Not like that. She narrowed her eyes, trying to read me like she always had, searching for that familiar guilt in my face. But it wasn't there. Another blow came when our aunt called about a scholarship for a prestigious creative workshop in New York, a week-long, intensive program with limited spots and a hefty price tag. Our aunt had offered to cover it for one of us. In the past, I would have stepped aside. I would have let Lauren take it, even though she didn't care about art, she just liked the prestige. She liked how it looked to be involved in something impressive. She would have shown up late to the sessions, posted about it online like it was some dream come true, and left with nothing but selfies and a tote bag. But this time, I didn't tell her. I applied. I submitted my portfolio, the real one, full of pain and fire and pages that still smelled like ink and midnight. I wrote a personal letter about what art had done for me, how it helped me survive in a house where I was always seen but never really seen. And when I got the acceptance email, I didn't text anyone. I just closed my laptop, exhaled slowly, and let myself feel it, without sharing it, without diminishing it, without bracing for someone else's opinion. Lauren found out 2 weeks later. I was packing my sketchbooks into a bag when she walked in and saw the itinerary on the kitchen counter. Her eyes scanned it fast, and her expression twisted before I could hide it. "You're going to the New York workshop," she said, voice sharp. "The one that Val told me about last year." I kept folding my clothes. "She offered to pay for one of us," I said. "I applied." "You knew I wanted that," she screamed, her voice suddenly shrill and cracking at the edges. "You didn't even ask me." I stopped. Turned toward her slowly. She stood in the doorway, fists clenched, cheeks flushed. And for the first time, I saw her clearly. Not as the golden girl. Not as my cruel, charismatic sister. Just as a girl who was used to taking and panicking now that something wasn't being handed to her. "I was just thinking about myself," I said, my voice calm and steady. For once. The silence that followed was the loudest thing she'd ever said. It stretched across the room like a thick, invisible fog, dense, smothering, almost vibrating with the tension she refused to release. Lauren stood frozen in the doorway, her mouth slightly parted, as if the next line of her usual script had vanished mid-sentence. Her face, usually so quick to twist into sarcasm or superiority, looked blank. But not empty. Just lost. And in that hollow silence, I finally felt something I never had before when facing her, peace. It was strange, almost eerie, to see her speechless. Lauren had always been made of words. Cutting, charming, manipulative, her tongue was her weapon, and she wielded it with Olympic-level precision. For years, she'd spun stories faster than I could defend myself. But now, there was nothing. She blinked. Once. Twice. And then her eyes dropped to the floor like she was searching for the pieces of her ego, shattered between us. I watched her shoulders twitch slightly, an involuntary shrug, maybe, or the ghost of one. Her hands, which had once gestured with overconfident flair, now dangled uselessly at her sides. That silence was more honest than anything she'd ever said to me. Because for the first time, Lauren didn't have a comeback. No deflection. No cheap joke. No backhanded compliment wrapped in venom. Just silence. And I knew in that moment, she understood. Maybe not fully. Maybe not in the way that would lead to an apology, or even change. But she felt it. She finally felt what it was like to reach for something and find nothing but air where her safety net used to be. The net I had become. The net I had woven for her, one exhausted string at a time, year after year. She looked around the room like it was foreign. Like my boundary had shifted the furniture, rearranged the walls, stolen her sense of direction. I didn't move. I didn't soften. I just stood there with the quiet resolve of someone who's finished apologizing for breathing. And something shifted in her eyes. Fear. Not the kind that makes you run, but the kind that makes you realize you no longer have control. That the rules of the game you built were no longer being followed. That someone you'd always underestimated had finally learned to stop playing. She took a breath, shaky and short. So, that's it? She asked. Her voice wasn't defiant. It was thin. Small. I didn't answer right away. I wanted her to sit with that discomfort. I wanted her to feel the weight of everything she'd dismissed over the years. The constant emotional tax she'd charged me. The way she'd twisted reality and painted me as selfish just because I dared to have boundaries. But I wasn't angry anymore. Just done. You're the one who walked over me, I said quietly. I just finally moved out of the way. She didn't like that answer. Her jaw clenched, and I saw the tears building. Not the kind born from guilt, but frustration. Frustration that her usual tactics weren't working. That I wasn't breaking. That I wasn't bending. I can't believe you're doing this, she said. Her voice cracked, but not in sorrow, in disbelief. After everything. After Mom. After us. You're really just walking away. She was trying to reframe it. Cast me as the villain. Again. Because in her world, setting a boundary was betrayal. Self-respect was disloyalty. She didn't see that I had spent years not walking away. Years being the one to show up, to forgive, to try again. I had cried behind locked bathroom doors while she charmed a crowd in the living room. I had stitched my heart back together while she passed off my work as hers. And through it all, I told myself, she's family. She doesn't mean it. You're stronger. Be the bigger person. But all that got me was being smaller, quieter, more invisible. She took a step forward, her voice trembling now. You're abandoning family. That word. Family. It used to cut so deep. It used to make me pause. Doubt myself. It used to work like a leash, tightening whenever I tried to walk away, reminding me that loyalty came before self-worth. That love meant sacrifice. But not anymore. I tilted my head slightly, studying her face, tearful, yes. But manipulative still. Because Lauren's tears had always been performative. Theatrical. Worn like jewelry at just the right moments. Don't talk to me about family, I said, my voice low but clear. You've used that word like a leash your whole life. Every time I said no, you yanked it. Every time I asked for space, you tightened it. She flinched. Just slightly. I don't think she expected me to say it so plainly. I kept going. You threw stones and called it honesty. You gaslit me and called it teasing. You took everything I gave and called it not enough. And the worst part. You convinced everyone else that I was the problem. She looked down, her tears finally spilling, not in apology, but in fury. In disbelief. Because how dare I pull back the curtain on the story she had worked so hard to star in. But I didn't need her to admit it. I didn't need an apology. I wasn't seeking justice. I wasn't even angry anymore. I just stopped giving. And that was enough. That was the revolution. I didn't need to scream. I didn't need to make a scene or tell the whole family. I didn't need revenge or grand speeches or a mic drop. All I had to do was remove the one thing she'd always taken for granted. My loyalty. And the absence of it. It spoke louder than any argument. It's been 6 months. Half a year since the last real argument. Since the last time I cried in the shower with clenched fists and a mouthful of unsaid things. Since I made the quietest, and most important, decision of my life. We're cordial now. Civil, we exchange polite greetings at family dinners, nod at each other across the room, even manage the occasional text if there's a birthday or a holiday. But it's different now. There's a distance between us that wasn't there before, and it's not the cold, bitter kind. It's measured. chosen. Intentional. There's a stillness in our interactions now. Like we're both walking on carefully drawn lines, trying not to trigger anything that might cause a flare-up. But where I used to tense at that silence, waiting for her next jab, next manipulation, next subtle act of control, I now feel calm. Neutral. Unbothered. She doesn't occupy space in my head the way she used to. The weight of her opinions, her judgments, the twisted narrative she spun so effortlessly, none of it lives rent-free in my heart anymore. I've evicted her from that sacred mental space, the one I used to keep trying to make room for her in, even when I had none left for myself. And what's even more surprising? I don't feel guilty about it. Not one bit. There was a time when guilt clung to me like a second skin, especially when it came to Lauren. Every boundary I tried to set came with a pit in my stomach, a whisper that said, "You're being cruel. You're giving up." Every moment I put myself first felt like betrayal. Like I was failing some sacred sisterly duty passed down in hushes and sideways glances and exhausted maternal sighs. She's your sister. Don't forget that. Those words used to feel like a shackle. Now, they don't mean what they used to. Because being a sister isn't a contract of endless sacrifice. It's not a pass for cruelty. It's not an excuse to demand someone's time, energy, or identity as collateral for shared DNA. I used to think being a good sister meant always giving. Always accommodating. Always smoothing over the cracks she created. I thought love was measured by how much I was willing to lose to keep the peace. But I was wrong. Sometimes, being a whole person means saying no. Saying, "I won't let you drain me anymore." Saying, "I love you, but I won't let you destroy me." Saying, "I matter too." And for the first time in my life, I said it. I said no to being the emotional punching bag. No to being the shadow to her spotlight. No to accepting less just to make someone else feel like more. It's funny how quietly things change once you stop begging to be heard. Once you stop chasing validation from people who benefit from your silence. The storm doesn't rage forever. Eventually, it settles. And in that stillness, something new blooms. Peace. That's what I've found in these past 6 months. A version of myself I hadn't met before. One that doesn't shrink in discomfort. One that doesn't apologize for her own light. One that sleeps better, breathes deeper, smiles more. And Lauren. She's learning what my absence feels like. At first, she tried to test the limits, sending casual texts laced with old habits, trying to bait me into our familiar power dynamic. But I didn't bite. I responded with brief, pleasant answers. No emotional investment. No weight behind my words. Just distance wrapped in politeness. And slowly, she backed off. The silence between us has become less tense, more accepting. Like we both understand we're not what we used to be to each other. And that's okay. She's still Lauren, still charming, still loud, still spinning herself into center stage. But something in her has changed too. Maybe it's the realization that I'm no longer a mirror to reflect her back to herself. That I'm no longer the audience for her one-woman performance. Maybe she's realizing that for all the time she called me selfish, what she really meant was that I wasn't giving her everything she wanted anymore. And maybe I am selfish now. But if I am, then this version of selfish. It looks like reading in bed with the door closed and no guilt. It looks like turning off my phone for the weekend. It looks like laughing, really laughing, without feeling watched. It looks like being fully, unapologetically present in my own life. It looks like peace. A peace I never thought I'd be allowed to feel. A peace that didn't come from winning a fight, but from walking away from the battlefield entirely. And honestly, it suits me just fine. Soft beat. Funny how the people who call you selfish are usually the ones who took the most.